They slammed him to the ground in front of 100 eyes. Not in a dark alley. Not after curfew. In broad daylight, just outside the steel gates of Crestwood Academy, at 3:47 p.m., right between the final bell and the first bus. The moment the sirens cut through the air, most students froze. The ones who didn't pulled out their phones. The ones who knew better, just watched, silent. Jayden Carter, age 14, honor roll student, poetry club finalist, stood for maybe 6 seconds before he was face down on the pavement. His cheeks scraped against the concrete. His backpack was still slung over one shoulder. He had never been in a fight. He didn't know what to say. Hands behind your head. He obeyed. Don't move. He didn't. His knees trembled. His lips parted like he wanted to ask something, but couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Inside the school, 24 students pressed up against the second-story windows. Some gasped. A few laughed nervously. One girl turned away and threw up into a trash can. On the third floor, Amira Shaw stood by her office window, her knuckles white against the blinds. She watched the boy crumble under weight he never deserved. The scene felt unreal, like someone had hit play on a video meant for someone else, someone older, someone guilty. She knew Jayden. Not well. Enough. He sat in the front row during assemblies. Always raised his hand even when the room didn't ask for answers. Wrote essays with too much heart, like he didn't know you were supposed to hold some of yourself back. She'd seen him that morning, early, walking through the halls with a copy of Fahrenheit 451 tucked under his arm. He liked dystopias, so they felt honest. Now his fingers were spread flat against the sidewalk. And the adults, officers, not from school but from the city precinct, towered above him, guns drawn. Her heart thundered. She stepped back from the window, turned toward the hallway, and collided with Assistant Dean Marcus Lynn. "There's an emergency meeting," he said, avoiding her eyes. "Principal Wexler wants all department leads in the conference room. Now." "But," she started. "Now." The conference room smelled like printer toner and panic under perfume. Principal Wexler sat at the head of the table, flanked by the school's legal advisor and 2 members of the board. No one asked if Amira was okay. No one asked what she saw. Wexler cleared his throat. "We're preparing a statement for parents. The language is neutral, fact-based. No assigning blame." She blinked. What did he do? According to a report, the legal advisor chimed in. He was seen loitering near the faculty parking lot. Acting evasive. By whom? A student. An anonymous submission. Anonymous. Amira's voice cracked. So no teacher confirmed it? No security staff? No warning? Just police. "Let's not get emotional," Wexler said, gently but firmly. "Jayden has been suspended pending investigation. We're following district protocol." "He didn't resist," she snapped. "He didn't even flinch." The room went still. The legal advisor scribbled something in her notepad. Wexler's gaze slid across the table, brushing past her like she was static. "This is a sensitive time," he said. "We need to prioritize trust and optics, not speculation." The meeting dissolved in quiet shuffles and forced goodbyes. No one asked Amira for input. No one asked her what she'd seen, not really. When she returned to her office, her inbox had already changed. A subject line blinked. School safety update, community assurance statement. She didn't open it. Down below, the sidewalk had been cleared. Jayden was gone. The sirens had faded. The students were herded back into class. But the outline of that moment, of his body folded into fear, was etched across her window. Amira sat down, hands folded, jaw clenched. She didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside her had started to split. By the time the sun rose, the narrative had already shifted. Jayden Carter had become a problem. Not a boy. Not a student. A situation. The school's official email landed in inboxes at exactly 7:03 a.m., like it had been waiting all night for the right moment to hit send. "Dear Crestwood families, yesterday, an incident occurred involving one of our students and local law enforcement. Out of an abundance of caution, the student has been placed on temporary suspension pending review. We are committed to transparency, safety, and supporting all members of our community during this time. No names, no context, no truth. Just language designed to calm the donors, appease the parents, and sterilize the trauma. Amira sat at her kitchen table reading the message 3 times, her coffee untouched. Her stomach churned. He had been forced to the ground, guns drawn, in front of children. And the school's response was to call it an incident, as if it were a leaky pipe or a false fire alarm. She arrived at Crestwood to find the hall strangely hushed. Students huddled in small knots, whispering, checking their phones. A video of the arrest, short, shaky, filmed through a window, had begun circulating. Most of it was muffled sound, the jolt of a siren, a shouted command. But it was enough. The rumors twisted fast. Jayden was caught stealing. He had drugs. He threatened someone. The white boy who'd filed the anonymous report was already being protected, his name scrubbed from everything, his version accepted without scrutiny. And then came the community circle. Amira was assigned to lead 11th grade. She entered the media center to find 22 students sitting cross-legged on the carpet, their faces masks of detachment and unease. Some had notebooks in their laps. Others just stared at the floor. She was supposed to say something neutral, something safe, but the words didn't come. A girl in a hoodie raised her hand. Is it true he had a weapon? Amira looked at her. No, it's not true. Another boy added, well, why would the cops show up like that unless he did something? Silence fell. That sentence, careless, instinctive, echoed through the room louder than any answer she could give. Not because it was new, but because it was normal, expected, learned. Amira swallowed the knot in her throat. They came, she said quietly, because someone was afraid of a boy who didn't match their idea of safe. Nobody spoke, and no one denied it. Later that day, she passed by Principal Wexler's office. Inside, she saw him laughing with the legal advisor, coffee in hand. Behind them, the printed version of the school's new poster campaign stood tall on an easel. Crestwood cares. Every student. Every day. She kept walking. In the main office, Simone Carter appeared just after lunch, standing like a stone pillar near the reception desk. Her face was calm, but her hands clutched her purse with white-knuckled intensity. I'd like to speak to someone about my son, she said. The receptionist glanced nervously toward Wexler's closed door. He's not available right now. I'll wait. No one offered her a seat. No one offered water. She stood for 36 minutes until a security guard finally escorted her out, politely, formally, like a package that had been delivered to the wrong address. The next day, she stood on the sidewalk with a news crew. Amira watched through her office window, chest tight. My son is not a threat. He's a child. He's 14. And you want to talk about caution? Tell me how cautious it is to throw a child on the ground without asking a single question. The footage aired that night, her voice unwavering, eyes blazing. No tears, just fire. Amira didn't sleep, not because she was afraid, but because for the first time in a long time, she was angry, and she knew it wouldn't stop there. It started with one microphone and a sidewalk. Simone Carter stood in front of Crestwood's front gate, flanked by rustling press banners and the hum of passing traffic. The news crew had barely finished setting up when she stepped into frame, gripping her son's school photo in both hands like armor. No podium, no lawyer, no apology in her tone. He was 14, waiting for his ride home. That's it. The camera light blinked red. Simone didn't flinch. They didn't call me. They didn't ask questions. They treated my child like a threat because he looked like someone they feared, not someone they knew. I watched the video like a stranger, not as a mother, because no one gave me the courtesy of a phone call. The school protected itself. But who protected my son? Inside Crestwood, the silence grew thicker. Staff watched from offices. Students peeked through blinds. Security stood near the entrance, doing nothing, but watching everything. Amira stayed at her desk. She didn't need the news segment to tell her what Simone was saying. She already knew every word. She had lived versions of those sentences since she was a girl. She just hadn't expected to hear them spoken so close, so loud, and with such impossible calm. The fallout began before lunchtime. Parents forwarded the clip. Donors sent concerned inquiries. The local community center scheduled a town hall and included Crestwood's name in the subject line. The board called a staff meeting, emergency, private, no press. Amira walked into the conference room and immediately felt the shift. Principal Wexler stood with a legal pad, flanked by the school's legal advisor and a new face, a district board liaison with an expensive suit and a tighter smile. "Let's all take a breath," the liaison began. "This is a moment for reflection, not reaction." The statement from Ms. Carter was emotional, understandable, but let's not allow it to cloud facts. Amira's jaw tightened. Another teacher raised a hand. "What exactly are the facts? We haven't seen the footage. None of us even knew who filed the complaint." The liaison smiled. "We're reviewing all documentation internally." In other words, Amira murmured, "We're being kept quiet." The legal advisor cleared her throat. "We prefer to say we're ensuring message consistency. This is about safeguarding the school's integrity." Wexler finally spoke. "We've been asked to assign one staff member to represent the school at a district-led healing session next week. A forum for community voices. We need someone empathetic, articulate, steady." His eyes landed on Amira. She knew what it meant. The right voice. The right skin tone. The right performance. A face to stand at the podium and say we understand without actually demanding anything change. She didn't reply. Not yet. That evening, she stayed late. The halls echoed with the sound of janitors dragging bins and the low hum of vending machines. She walked past Jayden's empty locker, untouched, its lock still hanging open. A folded flyer stuck out between the vents, a crumpled notice for poetry club. She pulled it free, hands shaking. Back in her office, she opened her email. A new message waited. Subject: Ms. Shaw, don't let them change the story. It was unsigned. No text. Just an attachment. A raw, unedited video file. 1 minute and 23 seconds. The full footage, no cuts, no audio edits. She watched it twice. Jayden standing calmly. Jayden asking, "What's going on?" Jayden being slammed down without resistance. She stared at the screen as nausea curled in her gut. Outside, the sidewalk where Simone had stood earlier that day was empty now. No cameras. No reporters. Just pavement and wind. But her words still echoed. "I'm not just fighting for my son. I'm fighting for every child who disappears in a system that swears it sees them." Amira leaned back in her chair. She hadn't said anything publicly yet, but she would. And when she did, it wouldn't be a speech. It would be a reckoning. The footage wasn't just evidence. It was proof of betrayal. The uncut video sat open on Amira's laptop late into the night. No timestamp skipped. No sound muted. Every second intact. Jayden hadn't resisted. He hadn't even spoken above a whisper. One of the officers shouted before touching him, and then, impact. Concrete. Screams from somewhere out of frame. She watched the moment again. Slower. Frame by frame. When she finally looked away, it wasn't because she'd seen enough. It was because her hands were trembling so hard, she couldn't control the mouse. The next morning, she took the risk. Amira scheduled a private viewing with 2 other staff members she trusted. A history teacher named Colleen and Mr. Dunley, the school counselor. They met in the copy room, door locked, blinds drawn. She didn't speak as she played the video. Colleen covered her mouth. "God," Dunley leaned forward. "Is this what they edited out?" Amira nodded. "The official footage skips the takedown." Colleen straightened. "They knew this. They've been lying." Dunley said nothing for a long moment. Then, "What do you want to do?" "I need to show the board," Amira said. "We need to demand they retract the statement, reinstate Jayden, and hold someone accountable." Colleen stared at her. "You think they'll listen?" "No," Amira admitted. "But they'll know I won't stay quiet." An hour later, she requested a meeting with the board. The request was denied. No explanation. No reply. Just silence. The same afternoon, a staff-wide email arrived. "We are excited to announce an innovative new framework for student behavioral awareness and preventative care. The Preventative Behavior Index will launch this spring as a pilot to support proactive engagement with students demonstrating early risk markers. Attached was a multi-page proposal filled with phrases like data-driven foresight, student flagging, and pattern potential. It read like a corporate report dressed up as compassion. Amira read it twice. Her chest grew tight. Jayden's name was there, not spelled out, but obvious. Subject A14 matched his grade level, disciplinary code, and the fabricated previous concerns someone had quietly filed after the incident. She printed the document, hands shaking. Later that evening, she sat on her couch surrounded by paper, Jayden's essays, policy drafts, screenshots from the video, copies of student referrals she had quietly pulled from the system over the past year. A pattern was forming. It wasn't one student. It wasn't one mistake. It was policy. It was structure. It was systemic. She opened a blank Word document. The cursor blinked at the top of the page. To the Crestwood Academy Board of Directors, faculty, parents, and community. Her fingers hovered. She could still walk away. Still let it die down. She could take the district's next job offer and pretend this had all been handled with care. She could return to safety, to silence. Instead, she began to write. The truth is not disruptive, but the effort to bury it always is. What happened to Jayden Carter is not a miscommunication. It is a mirror, and you will either look into it, or you will become it. She wrote for hours, then saved the document, then closed it, not because she was done, but because it was time. The next morning, her office door was unlocked. Her inbox had a new message. The subject line: compliance violation, performance concerns. Attached, a list of vague complaints. Inconsistent messaging. Undermining policy. Failure to collaborate. The message was clear. They saw her, and they were starting to move against her. But so was she. The next board meeting wasn't held at the school. It was moved to a private conference room downtown, neutral ground, they called it. A space free of distraction. Amira recognized it instantly for what it was: control. A table surrounded by glass walls, leather chairs, catered fruit trays, and people who had already decided what the meeting was for. She sat alone on one side of the table, facing 6 board members. Principal Wexler flanked them. The district liaison took notes without looking up. No one greeted her by name. The air smelled like lemon polish and discomfort. "Ms. Shaw," the chairwoman began, "we understand you've raised concerns." Amira said nothing. "We've received communication suggesting you may be emotionally impacted by recent events, and that you're, perhaps, reacting from a place of personal upset." Amira tilted her head slightly. "And?" The chairwoman hesitated. "We're here to offer you clarity, not confrontation." Another board member interjected. "Let's speak plainly. The Preventative Behavior Index is moving forward. It's already been approved by donors and beta-tested with third-party analysts. There's no reversing that." Amira placed a folder on the table. Inside, screenshots of the uncut footage. Printed copies of falsified reports. A list of students flagged by the system, 92% of them Black or Latino. All under 16. "You want data?" she said quietly. "Here's your data." The board stared. She continued. "This isn't protection. It's prediction masquerading as policy. You're not identifying risk, you're manufacturing it." Wexler leaned forward. "Ms. Shaw, you're risking your future over a single student's experience." "No," she cut in. "I'm risking it over a system that would have crushed him," and smiled while doing it. The room stilled. The legal advisor cleared her throat. "If you intend to challenge the board's decision, there are official channels. We recommend you pursue those." Amira stood. "I won't be using your channels. I've already written the letter. It's going public. Press, parents, staff, everyone." A flicker of panic danced in Wexler's eyes. The chairwoman sat straighter. "Then I'm afraid we'll have no choice but to begin disciplinary action now." "Start it now," Amira said. She left the folder on the table, her badge on top, then turned and walked out. That night, she went home to silence. Not peace, silence. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Emails, texts, social media mentions piling in. Friends asking if the letter was real. Colleagues checking in, some with support, others with warnings. Anonymous messages called her unstable, angry, aggressive. She read every word, then deleted them all. She poured tea with shaking hands and opened her laptop. The letter was still there. She clicked send. To the press. To the parents. To the board. To every teacher on staff. It took 7 seconds to send. 7 seconds to torch the illusion. The next morning, headlines bloomed. Vice Principal resigns in protest. You buried the truth and called it policy. Crestwood's culture of control. Educator breaks silence. Jayden Carter's story sparks national dialogue on student criminalization. Amira turned off her phone. She sat by the window and watched the morning light crawl across the floor. She had nothing left to lose. And for the first time in her career, that felt like freedom. By 10 a.m., the letter had reached every inbox in the district. By noon, it reached the nation. Parents forwarded it in group chats. Teachers printed it and taped it to their staff room fridges. Students screenshot it and shared it line by line in Instagram stories. Jayden's name returned to the halls, not as a whisper of shame, but as a banner of memory. When a student's life is rewritten to protect adult comfort, we are no longer educators. We are enablers. Your policy didn't stop violence. It created it. This isn't about one boy. It's about who you believe deserves to be safe and who you believe needs to be managed. News crews arrived at Crestwood's gates before the first lunch bell. They weren't let in. They didn't need to be. The story had already broken through the walls. Principal Wexler appeared on camera that evening, pale and trembling in a navy suit that didn't quite fit. Crestwood Academy is committed to inclusion and reflective growth. He blinked hard. His hands clenched. While we regret Ms. Shaw's decision to leave, we respect her right to speak freely. He did not mention Jayden. He did not mention the index. He did not answer any of the 36 questions shouted at him when the mic turned off. Back at her apartment, Amira sat on the floor, surrounded by books and silence. She'd turned her phone off hours ago. The screen was flooded with messages, some threats, others thanks. Old students. Distant family. Strangers who had read her name in a headline and felt something shift in their chest. There were job offers, too. Sort of. Diversity consultant. Keynote speaker. Thought partner for an equity firm in San Francisco. All offering high salaries, controlled messaging, and gentle re-entry into safe professional spaces. She ignored them. She wasn't interested in being safe anymore. That night, she watched Simone Carter speak again, this time from a town hall, packed with parents, teachers, activists, and teenagers sitting on folded chairs. This isn't about getting Jayden back into school. This is about every kid who's been flagged for being tired, or loud, or black. We're not here to reform the index. We're here to burn it down. The crowd didn't cheer. They nodded. Some wept. Some stood. There was no spectacle. Only solidarity. Crestwood's board sent out a follow-up email the next morning. We hear the concerns and are pausing the Preventative Behavior Index initiative pending further review. No apology. No ownership. Just pause. But the pause was enough. Because the silence was finally broken. Amira walked through her neighborhood that day for the first time without watching her back. Someone at the corner store gave her free coffee. A student from a rival school nodded at her like she was someone worth remembering. And Simone texted her a photo of Jayden reading a novel on the porch, highlighter in hand. He says thank you. But I know it was never just for him. Amira didn't reply. She just stared at the photo a long time. And smiled. Jayden returned through a different door. Not the front gate, where the news van still hovered. Not the bus drop-off, where the security guards had become statues. He was walked in quietly by his mother, past the side entrance, through a hallway most students never used. No announcement. No apology. Just a cold reinstatement letter and a new schedule. He didn't sit where he used to. He didn't speak unless called on. He wrote in smaller letters, turned his pages slower. And when students tried to look away, it wasn't because they pitied him. It was because they didn't know what to say to someone who had survived being erased. The school was quieter now. Not because anything had changed, but because everything had been exposed. The index was paused, but not abolished. Wexler remained principal, but rarely left his office. Teachers gave nervous side glances when Jayden passed. Some apologized with their eyes. Most just turned away. But a shift had started. The poetry club posted Jayden's old piece on the wall again, the one they'd quietly taken down after the incident. A few students began wearing plain black pins with white lettering that read "Not a Threat." The pins multiplied by week's end. Simone didn't stop fighting. She filed a lawsuit. She spoke at school board meetings with unwavering calm. She gave interviews, not for fame, but for record. So the next mother doesn't have to prove her child matters, she'd said. Amira watched it all from the outside. Her resignation had become legend. Her letter quoted in education blogs and college papers. Some called her a hero. Others called her unstable, unprofessional, overreactive. One pundit labeled her a case study in emotional fragility. She didn't care. What hurt more were the silence and distance from the people who once called her friend. Emails from former colleagues stopped. Invitations disappeared. The world was polite, but quiet. No one said, "You were right." They just made sure she couldn't come back. Job interviews fizzled. A few companies ghosted her after recognizing her name. A charter network offered her a position on the condition she stayed away from public commentary. She declined. Her savings dwindled. She sold her car. And still, the emails came. One from a teacher in Detroit, "You helped me find the courage to speak up." Another from a mother in Texas, "I printed your letter and read it to my son. He cried." From a ninth grader in Chicago, "I thought grown-ups couldn't be brave. You proved me wrong." She read them all. Some twice. A few she printed and folded into a drawer without knowing why. One afternoon, her doorbell rang. A boy stood there, lanky and nervous. 17, maybe 18. Former student. She couldn't place his name at first. "I just wanted to say," he began, holding a small notebook. "That year? When I got suspended for nothing? You believed me. You didn't say it out loud. But I knew." He handed her the notebook, filled with poems. "I wouldn't have kept writing if you hadn't looked at me like I was worth something." He left before she could respond. She didn't cry. Not then. She just held the notebook like a relic. Like proof. She had nothing left in the system. No title. No office. No podium. But maybe she had something better now. A voice that didn't need permission to be heard. Spring arrived gently. It crept in through cracked windows, slipped under door frames, and bloomed despite everything. The city buzzed with soft warmth, with pollen and protest, and people learning how to speak again. In the midst of it all, Amira Shaw stood before an old red brick building at the edge of a neighborhood no map app would recommend. There was no marquee, no polished mission statement out front. Just a wooden sign that read, "Maddox Community School," and a front door that stuck when pulled too hard. She had come to say no. The interim principal had called her weeks earlier, desperate, apologetic, and tired. They needed someone. Just until June. Someone who could show up. Someone who didn't need orientation, only courage. Amira had ignored the first call. And the second. Then she drove by, late one evening. She saw the playground, rusted and cracked, yet full of laughter. Saw the peeling murals painted by fifth graders with more imagination than funding. Saw the older students standing outside, handing out food boxes to families whose names they knew, not because they had forms to fill, but because they were neighbors. She came back the next morning. Now she stood with the key in her hand. Inside, the floors creaked. The walls were soft with time. A heater buzzed with uncertainty. The front desk was held together by tape and memory. A seventh grader passed her in the hallway. "You the new boss?" Amira smiled. "Just here to help." The girl nodded like that was good enough. And somehow it was. That afternoon, Amira sat in the corner of a sixth grade classroom. No fancy tech. No smartboard. Just paper, pencils, and a kid in the back row who didn't stop scribbling the entire period. After class, she walked up to him. "What are you writing?" He shrugged. "A story." "About what?" He hesitated, then answered. "About a kid who's tired of being watched all the time." She nodded. "That's a story worth telling." That night, she received one final offer. A consulting firm in New York. Double her old salary. Full relocation. All they asked was that she stay neutral online. No further editorializing. She didn't even open the PDF. She just typed 2 words. I decline. No explanation. No apology. Just freedom. A few weeks later, she was asked to speak at a virtual alumni panel. Students from around the country logged in, curious, skeptical, open. The moderator asked, "What's the most important lesson you've learned this year?" Amira didn't pause. That silence is not safety. A beat. That when the world tells you you'll lose everything for doing the right thing, they forget to mention what you gain. After the call, she stayed on the screen a moment longer, alone with her reflection. She didn't look broken. She looked whole. The next day, she arrived early to Maddox, held the door for students, helped a teacher unjam the copier, spoke gently to a boy with clenched fists, gave a high five to a girl with glitter on her face. No cameras, no headlines, just presence. At 4:12 p.m., as the building emptied out, she sat at her desk, chipped, uneven, real, and for the first time in months, opened a fresh notebook. At the top, she wrote, "We are the ones they didn't see coming."